We have Pedro Sánchez against the ropes, and this smells like the end of an era. Gentlemen, we believe that within months, perhaps even weeks, Spain's Prime Minister could for the first time be indicted for serious crimes. Allow me one last question, not with legal arguments, just your opinion here. Do you think Sanchez could flee from Spain?
Well, Bettinocracy is not very far.
Now, there's no excuse, and it's the people in the streets who have to take control of the situation. A large number of Spaniards who until very recently only protested from the bar counter or from their living room sofa are the ones who have to take control of the situation, Albert. And this is the moment.
A person who has their own job, who has that freedom to create, a freelancer, a professional, a business owner, that's, let's see, a danger for socialism and for the left because they want captive votes. So all that impoverished, subsidized mass, the underclass you mentioned earlier as well, was part of the magma, the foundation on which they rely. Therefore, it's about destroying a society so that it has no national, family, or religious points of reference. Because that individual, completely uprooted in every way, is as easy to carry away by the wind as a balloon that's not tied to anything. It's that simple.
Nowadays, fishing for bluefin tuna is prosecuted more heavily than carrying a bundle of drugs. Drug traffickers aren't pursued as much, or at least that's not what we see. With the intensity that we're watched, with drones, helicopters, patrol boats from the regional authorities, and on top of that, our boats are inspected, and that's every day, a daily inspection.
Castillon Confidencial by Albert Castillon. Friends, welcome. Thank you, Confidentials, for being there in every corner of the world. Alert people, well-informed people, people who don't swallow everything they're fed. Information sometimes comes with a bias, but here you get the truth. Thank you for your support and for being there. We have Pedro Sánchez against the ropes, and this smells like the end of an era. Gentlemen, we believe he could be placed under formal investigation in a matter of months, maybe weeks. Spain's Prime Minister indicted for serious crimes for the first time. What happens next will be explained to us by an expert judge who is standing by. But the Pandora's box was opened by Victor de Aldama, the main witness, now accused, no longer appearing as a witness. He is appearing as the accused in the face mask case at the Supreme Court. He made it clear that Sanchez was the boss, which we've been saying for several years.
And that I am obviously part of the organized criminal gang. The Prime Minister, Pedro Sánchez, is at the top level. Mr. Ábalos is at level 2. Because he was the one who called the shots. Mr. Goldo Garcia is at level 3 and I am at level 4.
An organized criminal gang in which Pedro Sánchez Aldama says is the boss. It was obvious that someone as controlling as him, who controls everything in the party, makes the lists, takes care of everything, wouldn't let others get rich without being involved himself. The operation was very simple. Contacting the main construction companies in the country to offer them public contracts in exchange for a kickback. Aldama explained
that a construction company can contribute, like when someone donates money to the party. Well, at that moment, I ask him, if I ask, I say, hey, and how is that donation to the party going to be made? He tells me not to worry, we'll discuss it later, but he manages that with people who donate to the party.
Therefore, Goldo, Sanchez's man, takes care of allocating work among the construction companies and allocating the public projects. Ábalos signs off for that project to be carried out, Sánchez supervises, and the one who gets paid in cash is Victor de Aldama.
And the companies start paying me, they start paying me in cash, and I start bringing cash to Goldo Garcia and Mr. Ábalos. I make cash deliveries at the ministry and at Mr. José Luis Ábalos' house in Victor, and 60,000 euros were carried in an envelope. If I carried higher amounts, as I have done sometimes, up to 250,000 euros, I would carry it in a backpack.
Amounts of 60, 80, 250,000 euros in cash that were delivered to the minister's house or his office, and then they were distributed. How much did number one keep from that amount? It was clearly funding for the Socialist Party. And Sánchez knew about it to the point that he personally thanked Victor de Aldama.
The president with a security person. When I enter, the security person leaves. Only Koldo, the president, and I stay. And what the president says to me is, thank you very much for everything. I know perfectly well what you're doing, and I just wanted to thank you. I take a picture with him, which Koldo takes for me.
Did you notice? The security person leaves. They don't want the police officer to hear the shady deal. So he doesn't hear that they're asking for public works money to fund themselves, to get rich, and also to finance the party. Gentlemen, after what we've heard before the judges, the indictment of Pedro Sánchez seems inevitable. As long as Aldama can prove it, as he says he can prove it, everything he has stated, he has messages, WhatsApps, and Koldo has enough recordings for the bomb to go off. So that once and for all, what we in the free press are reporting can be proven in court. But what will happen when he is charged? There is a friend who was a justice of that Supreme Court and also a judge at the Human Rights Court in Strasbourg. Mr. Borrego, welcome.
Welcome, Mr. Albert.
We know that he could be charged, and if that's the case, there's a very strange procedure called the request for waiver of immunity. That is, the judges have to ask Congress to allow Sánchez to be tried. It's absurd that a politician is above a judge, but that's what the law says, right, Your Honor?
Yes, but Mr. Albert, I think we're going much further. Let's see, I just heard in the car when I was coming home that the Socialist Party has requested protection from the second chamber because they're lying, well, not lying, but that Aldama is accusing the Socialist Party without evidence. I think the Sanchez's party, because this is Sanchez's, it's not socialist, has a problem right now. Legal, they're missing a jurist because the one who's testifying this morning, the one who testified, is under investigation. And someone under investigation can say whatever they want. He's not a witness. He doesn't have the obligation to tell the truth like a witness does. He can say whatever he wants, whether it's true or not, whatever he feels like, because that's what it means to be under investigation. Secondly, for the Prime Minister to be charged as a result of what Aldama is saying, it has to be a proven fact. Aldama is saying some things, we'll see if they can be proven. And when the final stage of the process arrives, we'll see what filing the prosecution submits. I have a lot of confidence in Luzon, but 0, minimal, no, not 0, below 0 with Paramato. The Attorney General, when she was appointed, I said she'd make the previous one, Alvaro, look good, and she will, because she's even more biased. We'll see what the anti-corruption prosecutor says, and we'll see what the court's account of proven facts is in its ruling. If he thinks that the Prime Minister has allegedly committed a criminal act, he will seek parliamentary authorization from the chamber. As a member of Parliament, according to Article 7.1 of the Constitution, the request for authorization is governed, and it seems people have forgotten about this, by a law from 1912, that is from a century and 13 or 14 years ago, from February 9th, 1912. It's a law from the time of Alfonso II, the King of Spain, and Minister José Canalejas. and it's the law that declares which courts are to have jurisdiction over cases against deputies and senators, which is the Supreme Court, the second chamber. In other words, we're talking about a law from 2012. So first of all, he hasn't been charged.
Yes, yes, I know I talk fast, but Pero, but those of us who believe it will happen sooner or later, well, unless he gets on a plane and leaves Spain, right? But those of us who believe that could happen want to know how it's possible for politics to stop judicial action. How is that possible? Well, now that he still has a majority in Congress, maybe it's actually convenient for him to be indicted so they can say, no, don't put him on trial and close the case, right?
Let's see. Article 7 of the 1912 law from over a century ago says that if the request for waiver of immunity is denied, the case will be dismissed, which means it will be closed. That's the ordinary language. But let me tell you something. I'm going as fast as you are. I'm going to assume there's a formal charge. I'm going to think there might be a request for waiver of immunity, all right? According to Article 71.1 of the Constitution. Now tell me what's going to happen in the Parliament, specifically in the Congress, which is the chamber the President belongs to. Look, Mr. Albert, you're asking me because you consider me a legal expert, and I'm going to answer as a legal expert. I'm not a hooligan, I'm a legal expert, not a troublemaker like those who think they know. After a cabinet meeting, in that contest, Pedro Sánchez started to see which minister flatters him the most. And there's a minister, Oscar Puente, who, as a legal expert, discredits Judge Peinado. And I, as a legal expert, give Minister Oscar Puente credit, who tried to change Article 2 of Law 5097, the government law, do you remember? That's when the minister proposed replacing the expression president of the government with fucking boss. That's what he wanted, to talk about the fucking boss instead of the president of the government. And then the other jurist who's also there trying to win the #1 spot as Sanchez's brown noser in the Council of Ministers, which is Minister Bolaños, better known for having set up a corporation with a very telling name, Demolitions, Judicial Demolitions, Bolaños S.A., which is working at full capacity all over Spain. As you know, the courts have already disappeared. Now they're just sections. Anyway, he's doing things that are unheard of. What's going to happen with the request to lift parliamentary immunity? Can they grant it or not? All right, to begin with, do they have to give reasons for granting or denying the request to lift parliamentary immunity? There are different opinions. If they deny it, can someone be prosecuted again once they stop being a member of parliament? There are different opinions. Legal doctrine isn't very settled on it. I've been looking at the requests for waiving immunity that have been granted and denied, and the truth is that, as a socialist said the other day, I think it was Rafael Simancas, in this century, so far this century, there hasn't been a single denial. There haven't been many requests either. The last denial was in 1989, I think. No, in 1998. But I don't know what will happen. But let me do one thing, Mr. Albert, to outrun you.
Come on.
I'm going to run faster than you. You're already facing a request to lift your immunity. Well, I'm going to pardon myself. It turns out that here, Mr. Albert, people are saying that this government wants things to go quickly, so the government can pardon Abalos, Koldo, and company. Let's see, Mr. Albert, there's an Article 102 of the Constitution that regulates the criminal responsibility of the President and the other members of the government, which will be enforceable if the accusation is for treason. And paragraph 3 of Article 102 says, the royal prerogative of pardon shall not be applicable to any of the cases in this article. Don Albert, Minister Barrio Nuevo, was pardoned by the Aznar government. It was signed by King Juan Carlos. I believe that no minister can be pardoned. Article 102, number 3 is very clear.
Yes, yes. But he tells me, but of course, from what one believes to what they're actually going to do, there's a difference. Allow me one last question, not with legal arguments, just your opinion. Do you think Sánchez could flee Spain?
Well, Bettino Craxi isn't that far off.
He went to Tunisia? We'll see. Time will put everyone in their place. A big hug.
Thank you. Hugs. And we are at the end of an era. Let's all realize that this is coming to an end. Thank God.
Hopefully, thank God.
Hugs.
Hugs, Don Javier. Purida. Gentlemen, this is good news. Trust me, we're at the end of a cycle. Yes, they'll kick and scream. They'll cling to the ballot box through electoral fraud. They'll legalize millions so they can vote for them. But this is coming to an end. And as we said at the beginning, there are a lot of high-ranking officials from the Sánchez government, from the embassies, from the administration, who are desperately looking for jobs because they know this is coming to an end. Sánchez doesn't have much time left. I don't think he'll leave willingly, but we'll see. Maybe that's the reaction that caused so much violence when Vito Quiles ran into Begoña Gómez on the streets of Madrid.
Mrs. Gómez, how are you? Do you regret using your position as the president's wife to make shady deals, Mrs. Gómez? Do you regret it? Hey, don't take my phone. Mrs. Gómez, do you regret using your position as the president's wife to make shady deals? Putting an advisor on the public payroll, Mrs. Gómez? Did you use an advisor, paid for by all Spaniards, for your personal business dealings? Do you regret using your position as the president's wife, Mrs. Gómez, to do business?
Take that crap away.
Stop, stop, don't hit me, stop, stop, hey, police, stop, stop, hey.
Stop, stop, stop. But what are you doing? But don't touch me. Begoña Gómez is leaving. Begoña Gómez is leaving.
Grabbing him by the neck, hitting him, they're very nervous. They know there's little time left. They know it's ending. I don't know, but you can smell the end of the cycle. The rats can smell it, and the ones on the ship are the first to leave. My dear Julio Bronchel, forensic psychologist, a lot of violence from two women grabbing Vito by the neck. Vito isn't a big guy. He's not Bertrand Ndongo. He's just a young guy, not much, with a level of violence I hadn't seen before. How do you understand it?
Well, maybe you haven't seen it, and neither have I. But Begoña Gómez, possibly yes. Let's not forget that she would be very close to the doormen of the zonas, the ones her family prospered from. Therefore, that brothel-like and also sinister environment is something very close to her. Therefore, once there is a stressor that breaks through this person's usual restraints, the real Begoña Gómez comes out and shows herself in all her fullness and splendor. It doesn't surprise me at all. That's what's behind just a veneer, a few set phrases, and a few silly things. That's the real Begoña Gómez.
It's possible that she was looking at land because Aldama yesterday, one of the things he discovered is that Begoña Gómez buys land in Madrid. He was interested in one and they told him not that one, it's for Begoña.
Coldo Garcia comes to me and tells me that we have a problem with Campos Velázquez, that we have to withdraw the offer. I tell him I don't understand why we have to withdraw the offer. And he tells me it's because Mrs. Begoña Gómez, wife of the Prime Minister, Pedro Sánchez, has said that she wants Campos Velázquez for herself. So they switch things on me. They take Campos Velázquez away from me. We have to withdraw the offer with everything that comes with withdrawing the offer. It's requested, and with the fund, they offer me a piece of land that even they don't know who owns it, and in the end, we have to find out ourselves.
Seller, buyer of land, of course. Here you have to ask yourself, how many does she have, right? How many properties in Spain or in the Dominican Republic in places she frequents does Begoña Gómez have? Whose name are they under? How did she pay for them? Did she pay cash or get a mortgage? I have so many questions, Julio. I already know that what is happening in the courts would mean the immediate resignation of the entire government in any other country. But I have the feeling that this is the end of a cycle. That's how I feel. I'm hearing things from everywhere. I hope I'm not being deceived.
Yes. The thing is that we have to keep pushing, right? And besides, you ask very good questions like how many more properties do they have? But the real question is, what is Begoña Gómez doing operating at that level? But who is Begoña Gómez? Who the hell is she to have that level of influence? And the answer is immediate. You don't have to be Sherlock Holmes. She's simply the Prime Minister's wife, that's all. So everything points in the same direction. You really don't need to be very perceptive or do a lot of investigating. We are facing what you have been denouncing for, let's see, more than 5 years now. A corrupt government and a criminal organization entrenched in the highest spheres of power. That is there to do business and also to destroy this country. Of course, because this country is the last thing they care about. And along the way, with the cover of socialist demagoguery, which is even more dangerous than all the corruption they bring with them.
Don't forget, as we mentioned at the beginning of the program, that Aldama made it clear how the hierarchy of the criminal organization works.
And that I am obviously part of the organized crime ring. The Prime Minister, Pedro Sánchez, is at level 1. Mr. Ábalos is at level 2, because he was the one calling the shots. Mr. Goldo Garcia is at level 3, and I am at level 4.
It couldn't be explained any clearer. My dear Ricardo Morado, how are you? Logistics expert, Vice President of Giro 180. They come to power to enrich themselves, set up a criminal structure to finance themselves, their party, and so their children and grandchildren can live off the racket for several generations. Is this what politics in Spain has come to?
This and a previous step which you forgot. Even before coming to power, they were already thinking about getting rich. Otherwise, why would we have seen those images the other day from Congress, from that infamous ballot rigging session in Congress or attempted ballot rigging session? Even before coming to power, they were already thinking about making a huge profit off it. Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because for those of us who truly believe that politics can help citizens, it's a real shame. Unfortunately, politics is reduced to this, at least from the citizens' perspective. Why? Because those who are in charge, those who end up in the halls of power, and those who end up having power, they don't become what we see. They're already like that before they get there. But since they have no other work ambition than that, and beyond politics, they are not able to survive. So they see politics not as a service to the citizen, but as something more than just an employment relationship with themselves. Not towards the citizen, but with themselves. They see it as something more than that, as a source of business with no end and without any kind of scruples. And unfortunately, the only ones who end up harmed in all of this are the usual ones, those of us out in the real world and those of us who work.
But Sánchez, who has been who he is since he arrived, I think he hasn't fooled anyone. I mean, he always cheated to get there, he always lied, and he always dipped his hand in the till. We all knew that. And yet 8 million Spaniards vote for him. And he takes the doorman of a brothel as his errand boy for everything, which I understand is the underworld he's always been involved in. Here, democracy fails. Here, the parties fail for being able to elevate a character like that instead of discarding him along the way. And here, the voters fail, Julio. Everything fails here.
It's a systemic failure, we could say, because everything is failing, obviously. Let's see. To analyze things in an orderly way, the left is what it is. It's an ideology, it's a political movement that has already historically demonstrated, for those who want to be informed, its repeated failures. All socialist experiments end the way they always do. Death, misery, hunger, destruction, political persecution, loss of human dignity through annihilation, that's there. But in the particular case of what we've been experiencing in these last 8 years with the government of Sánchez and all his cronies, there's an added factor of absolute moral corruption. Because there have always been corrupt people affiliated with power, because they see an opportunity, a vantage point to do business, but in this case, we've already reached the peak. They were already criminals. As Ricardo rightly says, even before getting so actively involved in politics, right? But in the end, the underlying problem is the one you point out, Albert. It's a systemic failure because we don't have a way to defend ourselves from a criminal gang that has taken over the machinery of the state and has hypnotized a whole inert mass that instead of thinking and voting critically, just follows the herd instinct, nothing more. Why? Because everything is failing. From democratic education to the very last of the institutions that should protect us and don't protect us. This is barely holding together thanks to a handful of truly brave people. It's like what Churchill said, right? Never have so many owed so much to so few. That is, the members of the UCO who have had the courage to persevere, a few judges who have stood their ground, and a handful of journalists who haven't let themselves be corrupted. That's what's holding up the great Spanish nation right now, and the only hope we have for the future.
Yes, because Morado, while Aldama was recounting this yesterday before the judges of the Supreme Court, Feijóo, a very weak Feijóo, as always half-hearted, was in Congress and Sánchez was laughing at him. Come on, I think he actually enjoys it when Feijóo takes him on so weakly. When will Feijóo decide to leave the institutions to really make a dramatic move?
Never, because Feijóo is in that strange place we call the dead center. In the end, Feijóo has always been too soft. We've talked about it several times here on Castellón Confidential. The right in general, and Feijóo in particular, already experienced this here in Galicia with Galician nationalism. He has always lacked the strength, that momentum that should push him to confront his opponent. I use opponent instead of enemy, but in this case, it is truly the enemy of all Spaniards. But he has always made the same mistake. It's an excess. I don't want to use the expression excess of politeness, but maybe that's what it is because the left has never been polite. They have always confronted the right and the citizens in an insulting way, and we have never known how to stand up to them. The right has never known how to stand up to them. They have always managed to bring the conversation to their side thanks to that constant and ongoing confrontation. And Feijóo, who, as I was telling you, here in Galicia already suffered from that same problem when facing Galician nationalism, is now doing exactly the same with Sánchez. Out of fear of what people will say, because of that complex the right has about not wanting to be seen as right-wing, they always use a soft, mellow speech. So in the end, Sánchez always ends up laughing at him.
Well, Feijóo, you and Morado, you and Carlos Marcos, since you're all Galician, you all tell me the same thing. Feijóo was already like this. It's not that he's becoming soft now. He was already like this. He was a social democrat, not someone who was truly right-wing, but a social democrat. Look, there's something else. Tell me. Yes.
I agree with Ricardo that there are certain ways, certain manners, but I believe that courtesy and good manners are not incompatible with firmness of principle. Feijóo's problem is the emptiness of ideas, the lack of a clear ideological direction. The thing is, when you form opinions based on polls, we end up with a compass that spins without any sense, and the north is completely lost. That's where the problem is. There isn't a clear starting position. There's a constant fear of the ideological establishment, of opposing it, that do-gooder attitude, that acceptance by conservative sectors of all the woke nonsense, and so on. So the final example of all that is Feijóo. There he is, a lukewarm man, watered down, without a clear personality, who, in any case, would do a good job as a taxi driver or as a receptionist at some big department store, in the complaints department, because he's a kind, affable, polite man, but he's not the man Spain needs right now.
I hadn't thought about sending Feijóo to work at El Corte Inglés. Poor El Corte Inglés. What did these people ever do to deserve that? Well, about the opposition, Partido Popular and Vox, Gloria Rosa Sixto and Maribel will talk.
Now Vidal Quadras is going to start a political party, I think, with the Espinosas, those who always jump on the bandwagon. They're very outspoken. If you all are as mature as you, eh? Vidal Quadras says that Vox is doing well, but it's not mature. But you are. So why is he doing this? Why don't you help Vox? And he goes with those who have left Vox, who, as far as oratory goes, you can't beat them. They have a silver tongue, believe me. But then what do they want to do now? Is this the right time to do what they're doing?
The Partido Popular and Vox have reached an agreement in the autonomous communities of Extremadura and Aragon. Therefore, Partido Popular and Vox can make agreements. I think the issue is Geneva 13. Because Geneva 13 is taking orders from Brussels, and this needs to be said.
Let's see, that useless Feijó. Every time he goes to Congress to ask the tyrant of Moncloa a question, he thinks he's going to get something out of it. And what this useless guy doesn't know is that Sánchez is thrilled about it.
In theory, with Feijó, it's really comfortable being in the opposition. You don't have to worry about a lot of the problems that Spain has right now, and the ones that this Pedro Sánchez is going to leave behind. He's going to leave some big, no, huge and very serious problems, very hard to fix. What happens that when you're in the opposition, you keep getting your salary, you don't have any problems, you don't have to fight for anything, and you're very relaxed?
It's possible that Feijó is very comfortable in the opposition, and I've allowed this outlet to call him useless because it's a description, not an insult. He's not useful as the leader of the opposition. Let that be clear, because here we don't like insults from anyone. Look, one of the main things happening in this country is that the right is still not united, or the opposition to Sánchez, whatever you want to call it, is not united, and they are. There isn't a single government partner who, even if they're told that Sánchez is the number one in a criminal organization, would leave him. Not one. All of them. There's Bildu, PNV, Esquerra, Junts, all of them. Canarian Coalition, all together. There's a scene, Vito Quiles, I go back to him, was following Javier Ruiz, the one from Spanish television. But I'm more interested in who Javier Ruiz was with than Javier Ruiz himself. Pay attention to this video because Javier Ruiz, the one from TV, was there with Álvaro García Ortiz, former Attorney General, with Baltasar Garzón, and with Dolores Delgado. The former prosecutor García Ortiz owes his position to. All four together. They really are united.
Mr. Ruiz, how are you? How are you? What do you think about Spanish television being found liable for spreading a hoax about Ayuso? Have you also been convicted? Don't be afraid, Mr. Ruiz. But as a leader against disinformation, you've been convicted for spreading a hoax about Ayuso, Javierito, whom Villarejo didn't know. Javierito.
Well, for me, more than the hoax about Ayuso, what really scares me is the scene. Julio, they really are united. Journalists, former prosecutors, former judges convicted of judicial misconduct. All together?
I have no choice but to refer to the classics. You'll remember our Nobel Prize winner Benavente when he said, "Don't build bonds, build interests." Really, what brings people together are interests. I mean, the union among pirates is nothing new. I mean, there's loot to be had there. There are shares. At a certain point, that can break apart, like what happened with Aldama. But what also unites them all is the same end game. A horizon that could even have criminal consequences, and that makes the solidarity among all of them strong. Like the prisoners who were chained to a galley, the galley slaves, now they all have to row in the same direction, because if not, tied as they are to the galley, they go down to the bottom. The solidarity among criminals doesn't surprise me, given the number of convictions there, right?
Yes, well, but hey, Dolores Delgado, they removed her from the Attorney General's office, but she never lacked work. Baltasar Garzón has been given another post as Director of Democratic Memory. Álvaro García Ortiz is about to be pardoned through the back door. That is to say, Javier Ruiz will never be out of work because he has been loyal to the cause. Could someone loyal to Vox or the People's Party say the same, Ricardo?
No, there aren't those kinds of relationships on the right, not even close. In fact, what actually exists are almost business-like interests on the right that make it impossible for those kinds of relationships to happen. That's exactly what Don Julio just said. What unites these people is the interest of a pirate, which is to fight for their treasure and to try not to sink to the bottom of the sea. That doesn't happen on the right. Among other things, because such scenarios have never been seen on the Spanish right, fortunately. But of course, these images we've just seen of Vito Quiles trying to ask Javier Ruiz a question, as you rightly said, upon seeing, the important thing is not the question, but the fact that all the usual suspects are together at a very specific moment. As we saw yesterday with the statement from Aldama and company, where if they're not united, they all end up at the bottom of the pit. We'll never see that on the right, because right now the right is competing among themselves, which is exactly the opposite of what the left is doing.
That's intense. Well, gentlemen, the regularization of immigrants continues amid assaults. Pay attention to the kind of people they're going to regularize so they can become Spaniards. Look at how they jump over the fence of the Gambian embassy in Madrid. Just like that, climbing over, several of them get injured from being trampled among themselves. These are the peaceful people who come here. Janet has been in Spain for 22 years, and it took her 8 years to become a citizen. It's confidential, and she doesn't think it's fair.
My name is Janet Gómez. I came to this country 22 years ago. I came with a work contract and a visa. After 8 years, I was granted citizenship. And I don't agree with people who have only been here for 5 months, 7 months, being regularized. Because all of us who have worked our tails off here in this country, well, I truly ask that this can be revoked and that those people are sent back to their countries of origin.
We agree, Janet, it's like rewarding the one who kicked the door in, right, Julio? It's like a general amnesty. If you come like Janet with a work contract and an apartment, you wait there 8 years for them to pay attention to you. Now, if you come in illegally by kicking the door, in 6 months you have everything, even the welfare check ready. Crime is rewarded, that's what it is.
It's impunity, but on top of all that, we're acting in a way that's completely contrary to common sense and national interests. Obviously, we should grant citizenship to those people who are useful to the country. And if in that project their usefulness and dedication to work and to the nation also help them build a life for themselves, they are welcome. But we would have to establish some priorities, some hierarchies. In principle, those people who can integrate more easily and therefore cost society less as a whole. That is to say, our Hispanic American brothers should have preference over other nationalities from the start. That's from the start. But here is being done the other way around. Here it seems that we give priority precisely to the nationalities that, as Catalan nationalism and separatism did, are easier to steer and more pliable. That's why they encouraged immigration from the Maghreb, because by bringing in a different language, they thought they could instill their doctrine more easily. We're doing things completely the wrong way. We've reached the extreme, even in this madness of the left, bent on destruction and on destroying us all, that precisely our Venezuelan brothers, who are perhaps the most deserving and in need of help and asylum, in many cases, they've even said that they were not needed here, that they were responsible for the high housing costs. Because the left knows that, since they have experienced firsthand what socialism is like, they will not be docile, pliable, nor will they be fervent supporters of the socialism of the left. So, really the fundamental question is this whole process being done for the good of the country or for the benefit of a certain caste and a specific group? That's where you'll find the answer to everything.
We heard from Ana Concepcion, Sofia, Fernando, and Fran.
How is it possible that an immigrant comes here and gets everything for free? And me, I have a bone disease, I can't work, And my daughter wants to go to university, and I can't send her because there's no apartment to rent because they're all almost 600 euros in La Laguna. This just can't be.
We're falling into a deep depression, seeing that in this country we're nobody. I'm afraid of these people who come in without us knowing who they are.
Well, I think we have no doubt anymore that if one day Spain goes to war with Morocco, which side the 1.5 to 2 million Moroccans, most of them living off the system in Spain, would be on. But that's what Pedro Sanchez's government wants, just like in the past with his party, the Streets in Flames.
Now, with all the people who are going to come in, and many of them will be older and will get a pension without ever having paid into the system, how is that going to be sustained? Everyone else can. But we must wait until 65 so we don't lose anything.
A proposal I would like to make to the Sanchez regime is that, yes, look, I'm in favor of regularizing all illegal immigrants here and giving them benefits and everything. But for every immigrant who is regularized, who is given benefits, housing, and everything we're giving them, because that's real, we are giving it to them, let a Spaniard be regularized and given benefits and a house in the country that person comes from, for example, in Morocco.
It's true, and we've talked about it here. It's not easy for a Spaniard to get regularized in Colombia or in Morocco or in any of the countries whose citizens have it very easy here. Look at the case of Luis. Several immigrants have registered at his house and he's being accused of document forgery. Listen.
A few months ago, my tenant called me about a property I own and told me that some Maghrebis had registered there. I went to the town hall, which is on the outskirts of Barcelona. They told me, yes, that there are 2 Moroccans there who came with a contract and even a receipt for the first month's payment. I said, that's impossible because I'm the owner, we're the owners, and I have a lease contract here with a man, a family. About 15 days later, something like that, the police called me, the Mossos d'Esquadra, telling me to come in person. I arrive at the police station and they tell me that I have a complaint filed by the Mossos d'Esquadra for document forgery. A Moroccan presents an illegal contract and nothing happens to him. In fact, they even regularize his situation.
Can you believe it? He's ultimately taking all the blame. There are city councils, I don't know if it's the case in Galicia, Ricardo, but here in Madrid, for sure, and in Barcelona, there are city councils that register 1,000 or 2,000 immigrants so the councils can collect subsidies, and they register them all in the same municipal building.
Here, fortunately in Galicia, we haven't reached that situation yet. But if you remember last week, we were talking about new situations that were arising in small towns here in Galicia regarding immigration and crime, problems that didn't occur before. When I say before, I mean until very recently they didn't happen, but now they are already happening. Galicia was that small isolated enclave in Spanish geography where illegal immigration still hadn't fully arrived yet. And now we have them here. They're already here in the streets of Ferrol. There are a lot of security problems, situations that didn't happen a year ago, barely happened 6 months ago. But in the last 2 or 3 months, they've been roaming freely through the streets right here in Ferrol. So, of course, those registration situations that we're hearing about and that you're describing yourself, Albert, it won't surprise me if in 2 or 3 months these things start happening in the Ferrol City Hall, in Naron, in Fennec, or in any of the neighboring towns around me. Unfortunately, the situation that the left, the socialist government in this country has created, it forces us to fight, and that's the only word that comes to mind, to fight in order to survive, very soon. Because that pull factor, that situation that allows any immigrant to get regularized with a subway ticket or with a poorly made contract has caused, like the one our informant was talking about, it's going to become our daily bread, and the real problem will be for honest people. Is crime being rewarded? Exactly. Criminals are being rewarded, and so are those who have entered this country through a legal gray area, and everyone who hasn't done what they were supposed to do is being rewarded. And there's a second message, which is the message being sent to all those immigrants who have done everything they were supposed to do on time and properly to regularize their situation. They're being told, you acted foolishly, you should have waited for the next decree, you wasted your time doing things the way you were supposed to. That's the message we're sending to those who've acted honestly and legally here.
There must be a plan, Julio, that's not just, I think there are more things, not just the plan for them to vote for me later on or to sow or destroy peace in the streets. They say that to claim that the far right and fascism are coming these things is to provoke the spark of xenophobia or racism. There is definitely some plan here, a malevolent one behind all this, to try to destroy Spain, which is what we're talking about.
The first thing is, starting with the vote itself, the devaluation of national sovereignty itself. It's that simple. You, onto the body of the citizenry that is the Spanish people, now insert a graft where the real power of the authentic ones, let's put it this clearly, the owners of this country, has been diluted because our stake in Spanish society is diluted, and moreover, in a gratuitous way. That, to begin with, is a dilution of the power of national sovereignty itself over a group that we are not very clear about, what their final intention is, whether they want to stay, what their objectives are. As one of the confidential reports said, it's very clear that these people come here as an advance party for other foreign interests, clearly from the Maghreb kingdom, right? From the Moroccan kingdom. That's the reality. And after everything you're pointing out, it's the absolute breakdown of an entire constructed society, because the less roots and fewer references an individual has, the more vulnerable they are to whatever those in power want to impose at any given moment. A person who has their own job, who has that freedom to create, a freelancer, a professional, a business owner, that's, let's see, a danger for socialism and for the left, because they want a captive vote. All that impoverished, subsidized mass, the underclass you mentioned earlier as well, was part of the foundation, the support they rely on. Therefore, it's about destroying a society so that it has no national, family, or religious reference points. Because that individual, completely uprooted in every way, is as easy for the wind to carry away as a balloon with no string attached. It's that simple.
Friends, I'm going to make a quick visit and I'll be back because in court today they've talked about Delcy Gate. And pay attention because what Victor de Aldama has confessed has a lot to do with an opposition leader, Juan Guaido, who claimed to be president in exile and who, according to Aldama, offered money to Sánchez to buy the Socialist International. Dear Gabriel Araujo, computer expert, how are you, my friend? How are you doing?
Hi, how are you? Good morning, Albert.
Well, Aldama has explained the details of how the Socialist International was financed with money from Venezuela, and even Guaido comes up. Give me a summary of what he said, which fits perfectly with everything we remember.
Yes, exactly, because the sequence of events Aldama describes matches the evidence that was already there, that has already been provided. And really, what's surprising here has been Aldama's statement directly pointing to illegal funding from Venezuela to support Pedro Sánchez. With the presidency of the Socialist International, that is, we have a scandal here, first, which is the issue of illegal funding, and then that these kinds of positions are bought, meaning that by putting up money, you can get the presidency.
It's tremendous. Juan Guaido had just been recognized by Sanchez's government, and there was a clash of interest between Aldama and Zapatero because Zapatero thought that Aldama was taking his place as a lobbyist, as a middleman, as Maduro's spokesperson, right?
Of course, that's what I posted yesterday on Twitter as I was listening to Aldama's statement. It's just that January 23rd was when, in 2019, Guaido proclaimed himself interim president. He was immediately recognized by many countries, among which Spain was not included. What happened? On February 4th, 2019, Pedro Sánchez officially announced that yes, indeed, Spain recognized Juan Guaido, prompted by Juan Guaido's offer. According to what Aldama has said, on that date, he places Guaido in the first phase of this Venezuelan illegal financing operation, stating that he himself handed Guaido a letter signed by José Luis Ábalos on official letterhead. And in fact, Guaido was actually offering to support to finance Pedro Sánchez through that oil he had under his control. And then remember, when you see that photo in Ferraz with Coldo, with Abalos, and with Aldama meeting with Guaido's representatives at the PSOE headquarters.
We're looking at the photograph, but it's incredible because we've talked a lot here on the show about the fake Venezuelan opposition. We're saying that both Guaido and Maduro, offered to finance the Socialist International with PDVSA bonds or Venezuelan oil bonds. Shouldn't Guaido be the one called to testify now?
Absolutely, but look at what Aldama says. Guaido's testimony is essential. But besides that, when Rodriguez Zapatero finds out about this maneuver by Guaido, offering to finance that assault on the Socialist International through the oil he controlled, Rodriguez Zapatero maneuvers with the Venezuelan government and removes Guaido from that maneuver, immediately intervening on behalf of the Venezuelan government. This was after July 2019. What happened, Albert? Well, in January 2020, we have the Delcy Gate, that is, Zapatero maneuvers to remove Guaido, and immediately Delcy comes here with those suitcases to Barajas in the presence of Abalos. This is not the minister who should be present. It should be the Minister of Foreign Affairs. But of course, he is the minister who was fully prepared for this maneuver, for this scheme, for all of it. So we have to see what those suitcases contained, if there was really gold, money, drugs, whatever, which is what allegedly ended up financing that takeover by Pedro Sánchez of the Socialist International, right?
It's a scandal, but there's a new piece, and it's Guaido offering to finance Sanchez's craziness, always with the Venezuelan soil. In the end, Zapatero won the battle, and it was financed. The International was held in Madrid. It was done. They appointed Sanchez as president because there were no other candidates. And we should ask how many members of the Socialist International were paid to vote for him, right? And how much did they pay?
The thing is, this is all about money. The scandal is that in the Socialist International, whoever puts up the money becomes the president. So, of course, Sanchez couldn't directly finance that from Spain's accounts, so he had to rely on illegal international funding. And indeed, if we put all these events together chronologically, let's remember that the Delcy Gate was in January 2020, and in November 2022, Sanchez was proclaimed president of the Socialist International. So in this case, Albert, I think all the pieces fit together, don't they?
No doubt. Thank you for the clarification, because this is one scandal after another, and we'll have more episodes. Big hug, my dear friend.
Hello, insiders. See you soon. Goodbye.
Brutal. And look, the government of Spain has invited Delcy Rodriguez to Madrid to an Ibero-American summit on November 4th and 5th. You heard right. Next thing you know, she'll be coming to a cannabis fair, since Delcy knows more about that. She will be in Madrid if the European Union lifts the ban that is still on her for being a narco-terrorist. And they've asked Alvarez, the foreign minister, for them to let her come. Of course, if she's a friend and has financed the boss well, how could they not let her in? Julio Bronchal and Ricardo Morado are still with us. This is Una Paga y Vámonos. Let's listen to Guille José Luis about the government of Spain.
I would suggest to Mr. Ábalos and Mr. Coldo that they get in touch with Mr. Amedo and Mr. Dominguez, so that they could advise them about what Felipe González did to them, promising to get them out of jail soon, and the time they spent. In the end, the problem with socialism is that the rats eat each other.
In Spain, there's a saying that goes, divide and conquer. If what is being prepared for May, whatever it is done in all the provinces, in all the provincial capitals of Spain, it turns out that Marlaska can't just gather all the UIP and send them over there to keep things under control.
That's not a bad idea. I'll tell the people organizing what they still won't let me tell you about for May, but I think it's a good thing. Let's listen to Xavier about the Court of Auditors.
If it's known that the PSOE has paid under the table and therefore their accounts must be off the books, and this is illegal, why doesn't the Court of Auditors open proceedings and start investigating illegal financing?
Well, look, it's very simple, because this lady you see, Enriqueta Chiclana, is the president of the Court of Auditors, and she's a Socialist Party member through and through. And besides, the Popular Party voted in favor. This happens a lot. They reach agreements, I give you the Court of Auditors, you give me. Well, the PP supported this woman who was a candidate for the Senate from the PSOE, a member of the Federation of Progressive Women. I mean, she's practically a card-carrying socialist, and she's the president of the Court of Auditors. As long as she's there, the Socialist Party will never be investigated for illegal financing by the Court of Auditors. If this isn't a dictatorship, someone come and explain it. Ricardo, the Popular Party is always involved in everything.
They're always in on it. Shared interests, as they call it. I was listening to you talk and I was remembering that famous line, who does the prosecutor's office depend on? Nowadays, you can finish that sentence with any institution. Who does the Court of Auditors depend on? Who does anything depend on? The answer is always the same.
Well, my friend Borrego, the judge, at the beginning of the program said, who pardoned Barrio Nuevo for the GAL? Jose Maria Aznar. How many shared interests? With the endless trading of favors, it's exhausting. But the impression it gives to the public is that there's a political class here, Julio. Now and before. With Sánchez, it's already a caste of riffraff, of the lowest kind of criminals, of drugs, prostitution, things many of us haven't experienced, but they are a caste. They have their own justice, their own laws, their own plans to escape. They live in another world. They're not like us who are ordinary and vulgar voters every 4 years, of course. That's how it is.
The impression is that of a widespread systemic metastasis throughout the whole body, not only political and administrative within the state, but also within society itself, which has become infected and accustomed to these levels of corruption. Honestly, the only future for this country is a complete reset, and everything needs to be turned inside out like a sock. Maybe the right term is a 180-degree turn, meaning to completely reverse and question everything from the start. And everyone who has participated and collaborated with this corrupt regime at first should be set aside and quarantined, because in one way or another, they have been accomplices. There's an interesting reflection, for example, going back, and what comes to mind is what happened in that famous federal committee where we saw them acting like hustlers while Sánchez distracted everyone. His accomplices were sneaking in ballot boxes to see if they could cheat and all that. Everyone who was there knew what happened, and yet they stayed silent afterwards. And we have the nerve to see the woman from Andalusia. What was her name? Susana.
Susana Diaz?
That's right, Susana Diaz. We see her there next to Susana Griso or the other Susana every day talking and saying things, and they've kept quiet about that mess for years, just like Borrell. They're all guilty, absolutely all of them. Therefore,
what's more, she says she doesn't want to talk about it for one reason only, because she's afraid of losing her position as senator. She's afraid that Pedro will take her Senate seat. That's why Susana Diaz doesn't want to talk. She has refused to speak. She had a big argument last week on one of the shows she usually appears on with Risto Mejide, where he called her out on her behavior. That she refused to talk about that past episode, which she had experienced firsthand. And she kept dodging the question. She said she didn't want to talk because the episode made her very sad and didn't want to give her opinion in that state of sadness. And Risto said to her, "Excuse me, Susana, what you really have is fear of losing your seat." And that's the truth. And this example of Susana Diaz is just one example, because it happens to all of them the same way. As Albert said, everyone who was in that room that day at that Congress, they all knew perfectly well what was happening. And everyone has kept quiet, because more or less everyone has landed a post here or a post there. Thanks to Pedro Sánchez, who at that time was the enemy, but here the concept of the enemy is very changeable. As you go...
No, the only real enemy is the one who threatens my comfort, my perks, the trough where I feed. That's the enemy. And if you look at it positively, that is, Here, the interest is not the national interest. It's not the interest of society. It's the interest of the party and my group. That's the problem we have with this system. It doesn't have enough checks and balances. That's why, as Albert rightly said, citizens feel these people operate in a different circuit from the average person. If you, as a self-employed person, make a mistake in your accounting, you get in serious trouble. Meanwhile, these people are moving. But really, with no shame, they're talking about millions of euros and absolutely nothing happens here because they know that from the moment, besides the headlines, possibly also to give the impression of justice, the ending isn't going to be too dramatic because they've taken over the key institutions. For example, the Constitutional Court, which has become, by corrupting its true purpose, aim, and essence, a court of last resort, and on top of that, a political one. So with that, everything is settled, meaning we might move through an uncomfortable part like someone going through a haunted house at a fair. But it's just a game, it's a distraction. In the end, there's the exit and we leave, buy some cotton candy, get on the bumper cars, and nothing happens. That's the feeling you get from this whole impunity circuit of theirs.
But we have to be positive. The public already knows what's going on. 3 or 4 years ago, they didn't, but now they do. Now, whoever keeps supporting them, voting for them, and appearing on TV, we know it's for a reason, either for money or because of indoctrination or because they're idiots, but it's for something, there's a motive. They can't say anymore, I wasn't informed, I didn't know, nobody told me. Now we know. Criminal organization, money, deception, frauds, of course, they've been able to and will commit electoral fraud if they can, just like they did at PSOE headquarters on Ferraz Street. Now we know who the person is. That is to say, part of the work, at least the work of the free media, we've done it. El Confidencial, The Objective, OK Diario, El Debate, we've done it. A small group, we've done it. Now it's up to the opposition to do their part, and for the judicial institutions, the prosecutor's office, and the courts to deliver the final blow. I still think, and more people are telling me, that as they're telling me they're leaving like rats from a sinking ship, I see the escape. I think we could be looking at the first prime minister in the history of Spain who flees with his wife to a country without an extradition treaty so that justice can't get to him and never faces the consequences again. Do you think that's possible or not, Julio and Ricardo? I'm asking both of you.
Yo primero. Honestly, I find that hard to believe. As a Valencian, I know the immense power of floods, and I think that only a flood of outrage, let that flood begin to well up in that mysterious cryptic event that you're pointing toward in May, and if necessary, another in June, and so on until the flow of popular indignation from all those who want a decent country for themselves and their children. Those professionals who want the wealth they produce to be respected, who don't want it to fall into the wrong hands. All of us who are fed up with that cesspool, that means, because honestly, it's the same to turn on the TV and watch the news as it is to lift the toilet lid. That's the plain truth. This is a real mess that disgusts any decent person. We have to put an end to this. That flood of indignation is what, together with what you're saying, and at the same time, encouraged by those developments involving the media and the justice system. But it's the public that ultimately has to take a stand and remove this foreign body we have, which is ruining the future of this nation, and with it, the future of our children.
Do you see a Bettino Craxi scenario or not, Ricardo?
I like to imagine it, but honestly, I don't see it. The truth is, I don't see it. I think the same as Julio. I think the end of this nightmare will come through outrage after outrage and by taking to the streets. Politicians, of course, won't get us out of this. This I am sure of, at least about the ones we have on the table right now. But it is true that only through the public becoming aware of everything you just said, Albert, that now there is no excuse to say, I just didn't know anything. Now, all of us who have access to any information, I'm not talking about Spanish television or gossip or all these things we can see in the mainstream media, but rather all those alternative media, like this one, or like all the ones you have described, Confidential, The Objective, and so on and so forth. Even on major mainstream channels like Iker's show, we have access to direct and truthful information from Kedigaras. and from all these people who are exposing all these people's dirty laundry. There are no more excuses. It's up to ordinary people to take control. Are there going to be those 8 million voters you mentioned who will remain loyal to the payer? And when I say the payer, I think there's nothing more to add. Yes, that's going to keep existing. But there's a large number of Spaniards who, until very recently, only protested at the bar or from the sofa at home. They're the ones who have to take the reins, take control of the situation, and this is the moment.
We're going to the newsroom. Susana Gas, latest messages.
Greetings to you from the Castillon Confidential Newsroom. This is where we're receiving a lot of comments and opinions from our insiders who, as I said, are always around the world. Ultimately, they are our confidants. Pizza Gato says that the business is our taxes. The business for politicians is specifically our taxes, the ones they take out of Spain in every way so that they can live very well. Mel Ferrer says that we are bringing the enemy into our home. Pedro Sánchez, she tells us, is rubbing it in our faces that he says no to war. So about Ukraine, she says it's just to make a fortune. He continues to be a hypocrite. We don't see it clearly. Manuel says you're amazing. The show, the podcast, the insider reports actually, and I'm still amazed, he tells us, to see citizens still claiming they vote for the PSOE despite all that's known and what you explained. I have to confess that I have always voted for the PSOE, but now, Albert Castillon, it would be absolutely impossible for me to vote for them. Conchi says she doesn't know when we'll open our eyes. Trump hasn't solved much, but at least he slammed his fist on the table about Venezuela, and not everything is just for show. Lorena also says that she hopes freedom and sanity return to Spain and that we have a good president in the future and that Sánchez won't be able to carry out that new election rigging scheme. Spaniards who are decent and have common sense can and want to continue our normal lives with freedom and, above all, with justice. Antonio says that the war in Ukraine only serves Europe to make some money. The top politicians, especially those who make more money from their positions and the deals between each other, are lining their pockets and working on their retirement. Also, Jesus thanks us for the show. And from here, he encourages all the Confidenciales, friends of Confidenciales, to help us expand this Castillon Confidential stronghold. Jan says, what a great program. Let's hope we can get rid of this mafia and change the corrupt system, especially that handout system. We'll leave it here, Albert. Let's encourage everyone to subscribe to our channel. We need to make it very clear that the channel is absolutely free. And all the channels we have are absolutely free, just like our digital newspaper, CastillonConfidencial.com. Thank you very much, Albert.
Thank you. Susana says this because there are people who complain because there are a lot of Google ads, a lot of advertising. Look, there's a plan B, which is that I take money from your taxes to pay for this. Or which is what Spanish television, La Sexta, Antena 3, or Telecinco do. Or that we turn it into a paid channel to stay informed. When there are people who do it, I respect them, but I think that in a national emergency situation, no. If this were a normal country, maybe yes, we make a supporters club, a website, and whoever wants to pay is to get informed. But when Sánchez and the national emergency are over, we'll think about it. In the meantime, our duty is to provide information, the more the better, and for free so that everyone can access it. Yes, in exchange, sometimes you have to put up with a lot of ads, but that's better. That's what I think. I refuse to make people pay to get informed in an emergency situation. I don't think it's fair. And finally, there's a Spanish businessman we've interviewed here. The only interview he gave was here, who owes money to a lot of Venezuelans who are on ships full of oil near Caracas. The businessman's name is Jesus Rabadi. I've spent months listening to those workers who send me voice notes and messages from the ships that he owes them money, that a Spaniard owes money to Venezuelans who work without getting paid. It makes me feel deeply ashamed. And we've put a bit of pressure on Jesus Rabadi to pay as much as a journalist can. We're not much, really. He just sent me a message saying that everyone is going to get paid now. Listen.
This is just for your information. We are already paying all the crews aboard the Balkan until February for now, and this week we are going to pay absolutely all the debts. I hope that the people who receive it acknowledge it and stop telling lies.
Well, they're not lying because they weren't getting paid. You just said it's only until February. Fine, it's a step. He always says that if PDVSA, the Venezuelan company, doesn't pay him, he can't pay. So don't make people work for free. Stop the machines. But I trust your word, and I ask the people who are on the ships to tell me if you are getting paid, all right? Tell me. Well, what kind of trouble do I get myself into? And you, Ricardo, running your logistics all over the place, my goodness.
Yes, the truth is that this week has been complicated, but oh well.
Do you know what I've liked most this week besides the thing with Aldama? The thing about the housing, Julio, is something you should analyze since you're an expert, a psychologist. Sánchez has promised public housing 16 times in 8 years and hasn't built a single one. Listen and watch this video. It's worth analyzing.
But I ask you not to let yourselves be deceived. The government, ladies and gentlemen, is going to build 20,000 new public housing units. Another 43,000 new housing units will be developed.
We are going to approve making 50,000 Sareb homes available, 10,000 new housing units.
There will be 113,000 more housing units, 15,000 housing units, 30,000 housing units, 100,000 housing units. I repeat, 183,000. The not insignificant figure of 24,000 housing units, 20,000 subsidized apartments for rent at prices.
Not a single one.
I've lost count.
We're getting 2 each now, huh?
We're getting 2 each.
Per person, yeah.
This is like those old peddlers, right? The snake oil salesman we've seen in some Western movies. Same thing, right? Up on the wagon. It's the style of the cheat, the fraud, the swindler. Because also, since that cloud of ideological lies has an addicted audience, nothing happens. Nobody holds him accountable. The real problem is there. Because the fact that an idiot like this is elevated, that's the problem. But they always are. These characters are put on a pedestal by fools. That's where the problem is. What happens with the left with the housing issue, to sum it up very quickly, is that it gets into a cycle of nonsense and immediate contradictions, right? On one hand, construction is hindered because it makes it harder to create new housing due to taxes. All kinds of problems, obstacles like climate change, that's the latest nonsense. Inspections, all just to keep leeching and taking money. That then prevents the construction of housing. On the other hand, it increases demand because they bring millions of people here who, logically, like anyone else, have the right to a decent life and are pulling the market in the other direction. And to top off the disaster they've created in a country where the housing problem didn't even exist just 15 years ago, now it does, after the left, with laws that not only fail to protect property, but in some way actually endorse what amounts to confiscation. And in the end, they end up blaming the poor saver who put his money into a home, making him responsible for the entire catastrophe they've caused. That's the way the left operates when it comes to housing. And then this clown comes out talking about numbers, whether it's 180,000, 300,000, or 60,000, it doesn't matter. I'm sorry, it's a lie. It's all smoke and mirrors. And then in the end, to sum up, the problem lies with the idiots who absorb that ideological smoke and come away high on it, thinking they're in front of a historic figure.
And if Sánchez is a historic figure, hysterical maybe, but not historic, dear Morado, a big hug. Ricardo, good luck to Giro 180. Take care.
Hugs, thank you very much.
Julio Bronchala, pleasure, maestro. Thank you.
Anytime. Best regards.
And in a minute, the National Federation of Artisanal Fishing will ask us for help. The Council of Ministers has issued a sweeping decree that puts them against the ropes. We're going to the seashore. You're listening to Castillon Confidencial. Gentlemen, the government of Spain is attacking the self-employed by raising their fees, attacking farmers with the Mercosur agreement, together with the European government and now the fishermen. They have just approved a sweeping decree in the last Council of Ministers that practically sentences Spain's most humble fishermen, the artisanal fishers. There are more than 5,300 boats along the entire Spanish coast dedicated to this, entire families who make their living from it. They limit their catches, especially of bluefin tuna. They make their lives impossible. However, the entry of fish, shrimp, seafood, and octopus from Morocco, for example, or Mauritania, keeps coming into our country and our fish markets. What's happening? How can we distinguish what's ours from what comes from outside? They say that what the Council of Ministers has just approved is a fatal blow for most families who live, and there are many from those 5,300 boats. The president of the National Federation of Artisanal Fishing, Carmen Diaz, welcome. How are you?
Thank you for the invitation. I'm well and in good health, thank God.
What did the government approve? What has it done?
The content of the royal decree is that 87% of Spain's bluefin tuna fishing quotas, 87% go to 4 private companies, while the entire artisanal fleet of Spain only gets, we're talking about small-scale fishing, it only gets 3% of the total quota. That's an offense. That's an attack on the dignity of the fisherman, a direct attack.
They tell me that they're also extremely strict with the regulations. And if they catch an artisanal fisherman fishing for bluefin tuna without a permit, the fines are extremely high.
They are pursued and punished like a criminal. And they're just making a living, whether they have a permit or not, which are just administrative matters. It clashes directly with the social reality of an industry that's going through a very hard time in Spain.
There's a man in Aguilas in Murcia who caught 2 bluefin tunas. Seprona is asking for a fine of 600,000 euros for him. At this rate, some fishermen could end up in prison for catching a bluefin tuna. We're talking about something crazy, but it's very possible, isn't it, Carmen?
Nowadays, catching a bluefin tuna is pursued more aggressively than carrying a bundle of drugs. To the criminals involved in drug trafficking, they don't go after them as much, or at least we aren't aware of it, with the same intensity. Meanwhile, we are watched by drones, helicopters, and patrol boats from the regional authorities. On the other hand, our boats are inspected daily, almost every day. If it's not one boat, it's another. We are fishing business owners, we are creating direct jobs, we are generating wealth, and we are providing the population with high-quality food. We were the ones who fed people when COVID didn't allow food to come in from anywhere else. The artisanal fleet, the only one that has been working throughout the entire pandemic, has been the small-scale fleet. And the purse and fleet, which has supplied the population, soup kitchens, and hospitals with quality fish. And instead of receiving a reward, we are being punished by the government itself.
It's crazy. What you're saying is truly surprising, but that's how it is. You get punished more for catching a bluefin tuna than for carrying a bundle of drugs. It's unbelievable. Tell me, what happens with the products that come especially from Morocco, Mauritania, and different places? I'm talking about shrimp. I'm talking about some species of fish. Don't they go through inspections? Do they reach the fish markets without any prior inspection? Because we know that the conditions for reaching the consumer there are not as strict as in Spain.
They can't have the same quality because they don't even have the same treatments for the fish. When it is caught, the way it is caught is not, but rather the treatment of the fish. They don't have the same freshness because the fish is mostly from Mauritania or Morocco. It takes at least 48 hours from being caught to reach the consumer, while our catches are within 24 hours at the fish counter or on the shelf. So that product already comes with added chemicals so that the appearance doesn't deteriorate, nor does the but it definitely makes the nutritional value, the flavor, and the quality of the product much worse. And then they compete in the market at the same prices as our products. Yeah. So we say, why are we even producing? If they bring us products from Mauritania, from Morocco, they put them in our market without having the same production costs as we do. Nor the same fees, nor taxes, because over there they don't have the same taxes as we do, nor do they have health inspections, nor do they have the control and monitoring regulations that we have. They hound us day and night, don't they? In Mauritania, you can catch whatever you want because there's no oversight.
How can the consumer know if a piece of fish or a shrimp is from here or from abroad?
You have to check that on the traceability label, but not just because it says origin Spain, because if it says origin Spain, it just means it was first sold at a market in Spain. You have to look at the traceability on the label further down with the barcodes and the numbering.
Nobody does this.
The consumer doesn't go to the supermarket with a magnifying glass to look at everything, nor do they have to know. It's the public officials who are required to make the situation clear to the consumer and say, look, this product is local, this one is organic, and this one is imported. But they don't do it. At the top it says origin Spain, but below it might say produced in, that's easier. If it says origin Spain, it's because it may have been packaged in Spain. Produced in already tells you where the product was made so that people don't.
Therefore, if I'm talking about large supermarkets, which we all think of with fish, packaged shrimp, that's where they're required to do it. Don't just believe the Spain part, look further down where it's produced. That's the key.
Exactly.
They make it so hard for us, so complicated to defend a sector like yours. By the way, the National Federation of Artisanal Fishing, you don't receive any public subsidies, do you?
We haven't applied for it either. That doesn't mean they couldn't give it to us at some point if we apply for it. But we don't want to carry any baggage from anyone, not from any political party, nor from any government, nor from any entity that could in some way. It's not that they're going to control us, but rather that our existence shouldn't depend on public funds.
No, but it's so strange. In today's Spain, what they do is so unusual that they don't ask for help or a subsidy. All organizations do it and some live off of it. In fact, these big companies that have benefited from the government's decree do receive subsidies, don't they?
Yes, a lot. In fact, just to give an example, we prefer to have our travel expenses covered to attend meetings, the basics. None of us on the board of directors receives a salary. In addition, it's established in our own bylaws, so we can't make a living from our representative roles. We have our own jobs and we are motivated to defend our fishing sector because it's truly worth defending. I can tell you that I am the daughter of a fisherman, the mother of a fisherman. My oldest son also has a boat. I am also a boat owner, and I am the granddaughter and great-granddaughter of fishermen. So we come from many generations who know how to tell a Malaga anchovy from a Gulf of Cadiz anchovy, or an anchovy from Mauritania or Larache. We know where the anchovy is from just by looking at it without even tasting it.
I hope the workers' commissions and UGT listen to your words and lead by example. Well, Carmen Diaz, best of luck. We will continue talking about the artisanal fishing that is being put at risk. A big hug.
Thank you very much to you all, and I'm at your disposal. Thank you.
Friends, we're talking about history with Paco Alvarez, our historian, and today we're going to show you why Spaniards don't have to apologize to Mexico for the conquest. The guest explains it very well. Paco, welcome. How are you?
Well, I'm delighted to share another hero with our confidants and friends, and especially this one. I mean, it's just like you said. He is living proof that what we call the conquest was carried out by the indigenous people themselves, either defending themselves or attacking other indigenous groups, and helped by some Spaniards. Today we're going to celebrate an indigenous man, a lord of the Otomi nation, lord of Tula, and a relative of Moctezuma. He was also a captain in the Castilian army, a knight of the Order of Santiago, a nobleman, a native Mexican. Don Nicolás de San Luis Montañez, none other than gentleman.
Don Nicolás de San Luis Montañez. So, an indigenous Mexican captain in the Castilian army. Is that right?
Exactly. It's something that would make Claudia Scheinbaum's head explode. We're talking about 1531, which is only 10 years after the fall of Tenochtitlan. But in 1526, we already know that Nicolás de San Luis Montañez San Luis de Montañez, he was already a captain in the Castilian army. But anyway, in 1531, Montañez, together with Fernando de Tapia, organized a Christian army, obviously made up mostly of indigenous people, mainly Tlaxcaltecas and even Mexicas, who defeated a Chichimeca army that was much larger in number. And they finally reached a peace agreement with them. And it's living proof that the conquest was carried out by Mexicans. It is indeed further proof. And this peace treaty helped make New Spain much larger. Later, and thanks to Fernando de Tapia and Montañez.
What do we know about this Montañez? Do we know where he was born, what his story was, and how he became a captain?
Very little is known. We know he was born in Silotepec at the end of the 15th century. Some say specifically in 1594, but that's not so clear. We know he died in 1580, and we know he founded cities in the name of Castile, cities like Acámbaro, which is in modern-day Guanajuato, in 1526. That's when, for example, the Purepecha people were pacified, and in Purepecha, Querétaro means place of rocks or something like that. And our Montañez was also very, very important in the founding of Querétaro. And, for example, in the founding on St. John the Baptist's Day, of the town of San Juan, or rather the city of San Juan del Rio, in the current state of Querétaro, which today is nothing less than a World Heritage Site.
That is an indigenous person with full rights, pacifying other indigenous people from the ranks of the Spanish army. Was this very common?
Quite common. In fact, he signed agreements on behalf of the Viceroy of New Spain with other nations. Because, it was, as Isabel the Catholic said at the time, he was as Christian and as Castilian as if he had been born in Segovia, only he was born in Silotepec. But anyway, it's very curious. Also, thanks to the surviving chronicle of the founding of San Juan del Rio, we know how cities were founded, how the Castilians founded cities in Mexico, in New Spain.
How did they do it? Because I've read and you've told me that there was even a horseback ride by Montañez. Tell me about it.
Yes. In fact, we even know the name of Montañez's horse because he rode a horse, and it was called La Balona. As for the founding, we have a chronicle that details exactly how it happened, so I'll follow it to avoid confusion. First, they held a mass, obviously giving thanks, and then the chief prosecutor would formally declare the founding and the name of the city, in this case, San Juan del Rio. Next, they rode on horseback through the areas. And to first lay out what is the main square, which later over time would become the Plaza Mayor. And so it was a line on the ground and the four corners from which the main streets would start. On those corners, a cross was placed on each one, and that's where everyone there would walk by. And they would go shouting, playing bugles, drums, ringing the bells, the war drums, and they would go shouting. In this case, town of San Juan del Rio, in the name of God, our Lord of heaven and earth, you are hereby founded. This is what our Nicolás de San Luis Montañez would say. And so, and he didn't just found San Juan del Rio, but also among those we've mentioned. And then in 1551, he founded Tequisquiapan, also in the following way. And in this case, now by order of Charles V, in the name of the Viceroy. And a lot of places, we know, in fact, Tequisquiapan was founded on July 24th, 1551. And we also have some specific document from the founding. It's wonderful.
It's beautiful. What elegance, what wonderfully elegant phrasing. Castilian cities founded by a native chief, a Mexican conqueror, and New Spain, which Claudia Scheinbaum hasn't wanted to understand. Do they already know this in Mexico?
Yes, they do know. But of course, it's not talked about much. I don't know. In fact, the statue of him in Querétaro, which is in the Plaza de los Fundadores, is a statue of a man in armor. It's not very clear, let's say, what his ethnicity is, but there is an 18th century painting preserved in the Regional Museum of the city of Querétaro, a painting that represents Nicolas Montañez. In fact, and we know this for sure because below the painting, his deeds are written, and it says there directly, the General Don Nicolas Montañez, Indian chief and lord who was from Tula, Knight of the Order of Santiago. I mean, it couldn't be clearer. I mean, what happens is that, of course, we don't know our own history. They don't want to admit that. Obviously, I mean, this is 10 years after the fall of Tenochtitlan. An indigenous man, a knight of the Order of Santiago, and a nobleman ensured that Charles I ordered his nobility to be inherited by all his descendants simultaneously. I mean, he was mixed race before there was racial mixing. I mean, what I'm saying is a living proof of what the conquest really was, of what it was, which is this. It's about integrating a country and helping some nations defend themselves from another invading nation. In this case, it was the Mexicas, and they were probably the bloodiest civilization that has ever existed on the face of the earth.
Incredible. What a story. In Spain, there is no recognition for someone so great.
Absolutely none, as far as I know. And if someone finds it, let me know, because obviously we're interested in knowing about it. But really, Nicolas de San Luis Montañez is obviously one of those we should be studying in school, because we've been taught not to be proud of our history. It's terrible, but that's how it is here and there in Mexico, because no, the conquerors were bad and they conquered you and whatever, and here because, oh, we were bad. Man, let's drop the act once and for all and learn our history. History was what it was, for better or worse. And what was good about that history is that we met, we recognized each other, and we became one people, Spain and New Spain.
Mexicans and Spaniards united, of course, with much more understanding than the rulers on either side who have no idea. Dear Paco Alvarez, I follow you on Historia Confidential on YouTube. Take care. A hug.
A hug, friends. See you later. And a kiss to Claudia Seinbaum. Mua.
Thank you very much, my love. Have a great weekend.
For all the confidentials, congratulations, Albert. Have a great weekend, everyone. And to all the confidentials, love from Alicante. I watch you and share your content. A hug to everyone.
Thank you. Love from Alicante. He has the perfect name for the joy he brings. How beautiful. Well, thank you very much. They have sent us many things, like a question about this photograph, this one, the one you see here behind me. One day, I'll show you everything that's around here, little by little. Listen to our friend Onka.
I've been curious to know for a while. Something about the photograph you have behind you, where you can see two civil guards, and no, you can't see it very well, but two people, they look like a woman and a young man, it seems, and that's what I can make out. If you could share something about that photograph story.
Of course. Look, you'll see this photograph better. It's three girls and two civil guards throwing compliments at them like crazy. It was taken in Cadaqués in 1959 at the very top of the Costa Brava, and the photo has a title, and it was written by the author himself. It's called Civil Guard Compliment, and this was done by my friend Oriol Maspons. Oriol Maspons was a friend, collaborator, and radio talk show participant. He was a wonderfully crazy lover of life and one of the best photographers Spain has ever had. He was the photographer of the Ghost Divina of Barcelona. Do you remember that time when, yes, under Franco, there was much more freedom than there is now in Barcelona? There's no doubt about it. Just ask Teresa Gimpera and so many people who were in front of Oriol Maspon's camera. Oriol gave me this photo. He signed it by hand, and I've always liked it because it really captures. When people say that in the 1950s, Spain was starving, it was a disaster, people, well, just look at what Spain was like in 1959. That's all. Each person can add or take away as they wish. I am just explaining a photograph. Everything here is a memory, and each one has some meaning. Someday I'll tell you more. Well, the actress, the comedian, her name is Rosa Romero. Angeles sent it to me and I related to it because of my sister.
Raise your hand if you lost a year of your life back in the 80s. To learn typing and reach 350 keystrokes per minute on a letter 32 typewriter, only to end up now typing on a phone keyboard with one finger. Right? Conclusion, don't take things too seriously because over time it's most likely that it won't be useful for anything. Same.
Well, he's right. So many little fingers just to end up typing with one finger on the phone, and Zapaterini's artificial intelligence really impressed me.
The thing with Maduro has been a setback. He knows too much, and that could cause us problems. Don't worry, Dad, I've already taken care of that. They won't be able to prove anything. Tell him, Bolaños.
We've erased everything, Godfather. Every document, every invoice, everything.
I see, yes. But the Americans won't stop until they find a way to link us to the business. You know what I mean.
Internationally, we're covered, Godfather. We've moved well in that area, and the UN won't allow...
Don't be naive. Do you really think the idiot in the White House cares about the UN? The Chinese back us because we've agreed to close our auto industry so they can sell us EVs. And then there's the train issue. Yes, it's true. We're going to bring them our high-speed rail technology. We're really great at that, Godfather. Stop it, Fuente. Everyone's mad about your trains. We can't even sell them to the Nigerians now.
Leave that to me, Godfather. But only if you get the judge off my back. He's got me trapped, and I'm not blaming anyone.
I'm telling you, I had it under control, but now...
You messed up. They caught you red-handed. I try to avoid those Yuko people. They don't even have pens.
And what's up with that Aldama guy? That guy is exposing the whole thing. Someone should take care of him. I'm already on it, Dad. But the guy really watches his back.
I'm sure this conversation has taken place, and maybe it's also between Monica Garcia, the current, unfortunately, Minister of Health, whom Sánchez wants to send to the community of Madrid so she can die slowly. I'm sure what Mercia sent me happened in some office.
It's for your good, Monica Garcia.
I don't want to go to Madrid. Ayuso will crush me. I want to stay a minister, keep my salary, and be a lawmaker.
In the tutorial from Sánchez that Monica sends me. What's up, socialists?
Welcome to a new tutorial on my channel. Today I'll teach you from scratch how to become Prime Minister. First, we need a couple of fools like these too willing to take the fall for you. And now comes the important part. We make up a few votes and slip them into the ballot boxes little by little, and that's it. That way you can become Prime Minister like me. All right, see you soon.
It's like jump mania, right? In La Moncloa. It's wonderful. Well, a meme about Isabel Pesoy, which means Pedro Sánchez is deceiving you, no doubt about it. And to finish, the chirigota, they've sent it to me from everywhere. A brave chirigota, they tell me it's called the Choir of Liars. Like Cadiz, no one else has this talent to talk about even ETA the way it should be.
And the friend sees when fate left a widow and a wound forever in the heart. It is not forgotten that they with bullets killed her poor husband, a civil guard officer. Damn that damn ETA and all their people, trash spreading death only out of hatred in our country. Oh, with the cry of rage when she helplessly sees the 5 of her dead with criminal faces in Congress. Oh, with the cry of rage, the one we feel when we see him with his salary sitting there, those who were murderers and now are free members of Parliament. Oh, with the cry. And the poor old lady's stomach turns from feeling so much helplessness. And this shitty country is heading for ruin. It has no decency and doesn't respect the dead. This country of crooks, traitors, and thieves keeps a president in power. For 5 fucking votes, for 5 fucking votes, 5 votes paid in blood.
How wonderful the way you can tell the truth with that guitar rhythm and those magnificent voices. Congratulations to that group because you did a great job. Friends, if you'll allow us, tomorrow we'll shut things down. Unless something happens, because almost every Saturday and Sunday we have to show up here, and on Monday morning we'll see each other. If anything comes up, check social media. That's where you'll find us. I'll be waiting for you in the trenches.
Yo lo sé, somos confidenciales, tú eres confidencial, yo soy confidencial, todos confidenciales, todos confidenciales, pero solo para mentes abiertas y para gente despierta. Desde la trinchera, las balas silban y no hay manera de salir allá afuera. Aquí la libertad tiene las alas de cera. Albert Castillo, Susana Gash, Tucci Castillo y demás. Muchas gracias. Con esto y un bizcocho, hasta mañana a las 8.
Castillón Confidencial, de Albert Castillón.